In a narrow street where sunlight struggled to reach the ground, stood a small broken house with walls the color of dust and sorrow. The roof leaked when it rained. The door creaked like it was tired of opening and closing. And inside that house lived a woman named Hannah with her little son, Eli. They were poor, not the kind of poor that people talk about in stories. They were poor in the way that hurts quietly. Some nights they slept hungry. Some mornings they woke up weaker than the day before. But every single day, Hannah prayed. Hannah was a widow. Her husband Jacob had been a laborer. He worked with his hands and earned just enough to keep his family alive. One winter evening, he returned home with a fever. Within 3 days he was gone. No hospital, no medicine, no farewell. Just silence. After his death the world became heavier. People who once smiled at Hannah no longer met her eyes. Neighbors who once shared bread now closed their doors. Work disappeared. Hope grew thin like worn-out cloth. Only one thing never left. Hannah, her faith in Jesus. Every night she would sit beside her sleeping son, touch his forehead gently, and whisper, "Jesus, I don't know how tomorrow will come, but I know you will come with it." Eli was only 7 years old, but his eyes carried questions no child should carry. One evening, he sat beside his mother while she boiled water with a few grains of rice floating inside. "Mama," he asked softly, "is this dinner?" Hannah forced a smile. "Yes, my love, today. Soup." Eli looked into the pot. The water was clear. He nodded slowly, pretending not to notice. After a few quiet moments, he asked, "Mama, did Jesus eat like this too?" That question pierced Hannah's heart. She knelt beside him and pulled him close. "Jesus was poor too, my son. He knew hunger, he knew pain. That's why he understands us." Eli rested his head against her chest. "Then, he understands my stomach right now." Hannah closed her eyes, holding back tears. "Yes, my child, and he is listening." They shared the thin soup in silence. Eli gave most of his portion back to his mother when he thought she wasn't looking. That night, Eli fell asleep quickly. Hannah stayed awake. Her hands trembled as she folded them in prayer. "Jesus, my child is learning hunger too early. If you can hear me, please hear him." Next morning, Hannah walked to every place she could think of looking for work. She knocked on doors. She waited in lines. She bowed her head in silence. Everywhere, the answer was the same: no work. By afternoon, her legs shook with exhaustion. Her stomach burned with emptiness. Still, she walked to the small church at the end of the street. She didn't go inside. She knelt outside on the cold stone steps. People passed. Some stared. Some ignored her. Some whispered. Hannah didn't care. She lowered her head and whispered from a breaking heart, "Jesus, today I have no words left, only tears. If you are listening, this is me crying." At that moment a man in simple clothes passed by. He stopped, looked at Hannah, and for a brief second their eyes met. There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment. Only kindness. But before Hannah could speak, he continued walking. She returned home before dark with empty hands. Eli was waiting by the door. "Mama, did someone give you work?" Hannah knelt and hugged him tightly. "No, my son, not today." Eli smiled anyway. "That's okay, Mama. Jesus will try again tomorrow." Those words shattered her from inside. That night, Eli's hunger was stronger than before. His body burned with fever. His small chest moved fast with each breath. Hannah laid her hand on his forehead. He was hot. She had no medicine, no money, no one to call. She held him close and cried silently, "Jesus, you said when the poor cry, you listen. Please, listen to my child." The night grew heavier. Eli's fever worsened. His breathing became weak. Hannah rocked him in her arms through the darkness. Her tears fell on his face. "Stay with me, Eli. Please stay." The candle burned low. Hannah felt fear like she had never felt before, not for herself, for her child. She fell to her knees beside the bed, holding Eli tightly. Her voice cracked as she prayed louder than she ever had. "Jesus, I have lost my husband. I have lost my strength. I have lost everything. But don't take my child. If you must take something, take my life, not his." She pressed her forehead to the floor. The room was silent except for Eli's weak breathing. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Soft, careful. Hannah thought she was dreaming. Then it came again. She stood up slowly, wiping her tears, and opened the door. Outside stood a woman she had never seen before. Behind her was the same man from the church steps earlier that day. The woman spoke gently. "Are you Hannah?" Hannah nodded, confused. The man said softly, "We heard crying. Not just yours, your child's." Hannah's heart started beating fast. "Please, he is very sick. I have nothing. I don't know what to do." The woman entered quickly and placed her hand on Eli's forehead. "He has a high fever." The man turned to Hannah. "We brought medicine, food, and warm blankets." Hannah fell to the floor in shock. You brought all this for me?" The man replied with quiet certainty. "No, we brought it because Jesus sent us." The medicine was given. The blankets were wrapped. The food was warmed. Hannah fed Eli, slowly with trembling hands. Within an hour, his fever began to drop. His breathing softened. His body relaxed. Hannah sat beside him all night, afraid to blink at dawn. Eli opened his eyes. "Mama," he whispered faintly, Hannah grabbed his hand. I'm here, my son. I'm here. Eli smiled weakly. Jesus came, didn't he? Hannah broke into tears. Yes, yes, my love. He listened. Outside, the woman and the man were sitting quietly on the small steps. Hannah went out and bowed her head. I don't even know your names. The woman smiled. You don't need to. Just remember this, when the poor cry, Jesus listens. Sometimes, he answers through people. Before Hannah could speak again, they walked away. She never saw them again, but their kindness remained in her heart. Forever morning light entered the small broken house for the first time in many days. The air felt lighter. The fear that had lived in the walls all night slowly faded. Hannah sat beside Eli, who was finally sleeping peacefully. His fever was gone. His breathing was calm. His face looked like a child's face again, not a suffering soul. Hannah placed her hand over her mouth and whispered, Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for listening. She stood up slowly and looked around her tiny home. On the table were the things the strangers had brought: warm bread, milk, medicine, blankets, things she too had not touched in a long time. For the first time in many weeks, Hannah and Eli ate a full meal. Eli's eyes sparkled as he drank warm milk. Mama, I forgot what full feels like, he said innocently. Tears ran down Hannah's face as she hugged him tightly. This is what hope feels like, my son. That day, Hannah made a decision. She would not sit and wait for help again. She would work harder than ever before. Even though her heart was still tired, even though her body was still weak, her faith was now strong. She held Eli's hands and said, My son, Mama is going to look for work again. Real work, honest work. Eli nodded proudly. I will pray while you are gone. Those simple words gave her more strength than any medicine. Hannah walked farther than she ever had before. She crossed streets she had never entered. She knocked on bigger doors, taller gates, richer homes, but the answers were still painful. We don't need workers. Come another time. You look too weak for this job. Each rejection felt like another stone on her heart. By afternoon, the sun burned her head. Her legs shook. Her stomach hurt. She sat on the edge of the road and whispered, Jesus, I am trying. Please don't let my strength break before my faith. At that moment she heard someone call her name, Hannah. She looked up. It was a woman named Mrs. Clara, a kind woman she used to serve years ago before poverty swallowed her life. Hannah, is that really you? Tears filled Hannah's eyes. Yes, it's me. Mrs. Clara looked at her clothes, her tired face, her thin hands. My child, what has life done to you? Hannah lowered her head. Life tested me, but Jesus kept me alive. Mrs. Clara held her hands tightly. I need someone to clean my small bakery shop. The pay is little, but it's honest. Will you come tomorrow morning? Hannah froze. Tomorrow morning. Work. Real work. She fell to her knees crying, Yes, I will come. I will come. That evening, Eli sat alone inside the house waiting for his mother. The food was almost finished. The bread was hard now. The medicine bottle was nearly empty. But fear returned to his small heart. What if Mama doesn't find work again? He whispered to himself. He knelt near the bed and made a prayer in his own simple words. Jesus, you saved me when I was sick. Please save Mama when she is tired. When Hannah returned home with a small bag of bread and a smile, Eli ran to her. Mama, did Jesus save you today too? Hannah laughed through tears. Yes, my son. He opened a new door. The bakery was small. The work was hard. The pay was low. But to Hannah, it was everything. She scrubbed the floor. She washed the dishes. She cleaned ovens with burning hands. But she never complained. Every coin she earned felt like a miracle. Eli would wait for her every evening with shining eyes. Mama brought bread again. He would shout with happiness. Neighbors began to notice the change. The widow is working again, they whispered. But poverty never leaves easily. One evening, Mrs. Clara called Hannah into the bakery office. Hannah, business is slow. I may have to close the shop soon. Those words hit Hannah like thunder. Close the shop. Mrs. Clara nodded sadly. I am trying, but I don't know how long I can keep paying you. That night, Hannah walked home slowly. The fear returned. What if the shop closed? What if hunger returned? What if the miracle was only temporary? Eli looked at her worried face. Mama, are you scared again? She tried to smile a little. My son. Eli took her hand and said, Mama, when I was sick you said, Jesus listens to the poor. We are still poor, so he is still listening. Those words again broke her heart and healed it at the same time. 2 weeks later, the bakery closed. Mrs. Clara hugged Hannah tightly. I am sorry. I tried. Hannah nodded silently. Her job was gone. Again that night the last piece of bread was eaten. The cupboard was empty once more. The old fear came, crawling back. Hannah sat beside Eli at night. Her faith was shaken. Her hands were empty again, but she still prayed. Jesus, I don't understand, but I still trust you. The fire inside the small stove had gone out. No bread, no rice, no milk. Only cold air and empty plates. Hannah sat quietly on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her hands rested in her lap, shaking slightly. After the bakery closed, there had been no other work. No one needed a poor widow. No one wanted weak hands. Eli sat on the floor playing with a small piece of broken wood as if it were a toy. He was quiet. Too quiet, Mama, he said softly. Are we poor again? Hannah closed her eyes. We never stopped being poor, my son, she replied gently. But we still have Jesus. Eli nodded slowly. We still have Jesus. But that night, hunger burned inside both of them again. Later that night, when Hannah finally fell asleep from exhaustion, Eli quietly stood up from the floor. His stomach hurt. His body felt weak. But his heart was strong. He looked at his sleeping mother. Her face looked tired, older than before. Slowly, carefully, he opened the door and stepped outside into the dark street. The wind was cold. The road was empty. No one was outside at that hour. But Eli walked barefoot, afraid, yet determined. He went to the richest part of town, a place he had only seen from far away. Big houses, toll gates, bright lights. He reached one gate and looked inside. A wedding was happening. Music filled the air. Food was everywhere. Eli swallowed his fear and knocked. A guard opened the gate. What do you want, boy? He asked. Eli's voice was weak but clear. Sir, I don't need money. I just need food for my mama. The guard looked at him with surprise. People inside heard the voice and came to see a rich woman stepped forward. Where are your parents? She asked. Eli replied honestly. My papa died. My mama hasn't eaten today. Silence filled the gate. People looked at each other. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She turned to the servants. Give this child food. A lot of food. They filled bags with bread, fruit, rice, and warm dishes. The woman knelt in front of Eli. Where do you live? Eli pointed toward the dark street. She is waiting for me. The woman placed her hand on his head. Then go quickly. Jesus sent you here tonight. Hannah woke up suddenly with fear in her heart. Eli, she called. No answer. She ran to the door. It was open. Her heart nearly stopped. She ran into the street, calling his name through tears. Eli, my son Eli. Far away, she saw a small shadow running toward her. It was him. His arms were full of food bags. Mama, he cried. I brought dinner. Hannah ran forward and grabbed him tightly. Where did you go? Do you know how scared I was? Eli pressed his face into her chest. I went to where Jesus could hear me better. Hannah fell to her knees and cried harder than ever before. Not from sadness, from broken pride. From deep love. From faith that now lived inside a child. The next morning, news spread through the town. The poor widow's child went alone to beg for food, and the rich fed him. People whispered, people talked, people felt ashamed. A man came with flour. A woman came with clothes. Children brought small pieces of bread. Even those who had ignored Hannah before now stood at her door. One neighbor said softly, we passed your pain every day, but it took your child to wake our hearts. Hannah did not feel angry. She felt grateful. That same evening, the man from the church steps returned again. The same man who had come the night Eli was sick. He stood at the door and said, Hannah, the town is changing because of you. Hannah shook her head. No, because of Jesus. The man smiled. There is a small shelter being built near the church. A kitchen for the poor. We need someone kind to help lead it. Someone who understands hunger. Someone who understands prayer. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. You want me? Yes, he said. Jesus chose you before we did. Days later, Hannah stood inside the small shelter kitchen. It wasn't big. It wasn't rich, but it was full of hungry people, and now full of hope. Eli helped her carry bread to others. Mama, he whispered, we are feeding the poor now. Hannah smiled. My son, once we cried as the poor. Now Jesus lets us answer someone else's cry. The small shelter near the church slowly became a place of life. Every morning, smoke rose from the kitchen. Every afternoon, lines of hungry people formed outside. Every evening, tired hearts left with warm food and warm hope. Hannah worked from before sunrise until late at night. She stirred big pots with shaking hands. She served food with gentle smiles. She listened to broken stories with a patient heart. Eli moved through the shelter like a little helper of joy, carrying bread, holding doors, giving water to the elderly. People began to say, that child carries peace in his hands, but not everyone was happy. A few people in the town began to whisper in dark corners, she is getting attention. She controls the shelter. She must be getting money secretly. Hannah knew nothing about these words. She only knew hunger and prayer. One afternoon, she was called to the church office. Two men sat there with serious faces. Hannah, one said coldly, people are saying you are taking donations for yourself. Hannah's heart stopped. That is not true, she whispered. I have never taken anything for myself. The other man leaned forward. Then why do you look healthier now? Why does your child no longer beg? Hannah trembled. Because Jesus feeds us through this place, just like he feeds others. But doubt is louder than truth in a broken world, they told her. You must step away from the shelter until we investigate. Hannah walked out of the church in shock. Eli was waiting outside. Mama, why are you crying? She couldn't speak. Her greatest blessing had just been taken away that night. Hannah and Eli returned once again to their small dark house. No shelter. No kitchen. No food. Only silence. Eli sat beside his mother on the floor. Mama, did we do something wrong? Hannah shook her head slowly. No, my son. Sometimes good people are tested the hardest. Eli looked at her with wet eyes. Will Jesus stop listening to us now? Hannah pulled him close. No. When the poor cry, Jesus listens even louder. But her own heart was breaking. For the first time in a long time, fear returned. The next 3 days were the hardest days of their lives. Hunger returned. Neighbors who once helped became quiet again. Even those who ate daily at the shelter did not know Hannah had been sent away. Eli became weaker one evening. He looked at his mother and said something that shattered her inside. Mama, did Jesus forget us because people lied about you? Hannah shook her head with tears. No, my son, Jesus never forgets. Sometimes he is teaching us how to wait. That night, Hannah did not pray with words. She prayed with silent tears. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. A small girl who had seen everything spoke up at the shelter. She never took anything. I saw it. She always gave the best food to others first. Another man said, I placed money near the pot. It was always there the next day. One by one, voices rose. Witnesses spoke. Truth stood up. The leaders were shocked. They realized the mistake. The lie had been stronger than trust. The man from the church steps stood up and declared, bring Hannah back with honor. When the message reached Hannah, she did not celebrate. She only cried. She walked back to the shelter slowly, with pain in her heart, and Eli's small hand in hers when she arrived. The shelter was full. People stood silently. The church leader stepped forward. Hannah, forgive us. We judged you wrongly. Hannah's lips trembled. I forgive you, because I know what hunger can do to faith. People began to cry. Some fell to their knees. Eli whispered, Mama, Jesus listened again, didn't he? Hannah nodded through tears. Yes, he always does. But what none of them knew was that the greatest test was still coming. That very night, a violent storm rose outside the town. Wind screamed through the streets. Rain crashed against the roofs. The river near the poor area began to rise, and in the darkest part of the town, where the poorest of the poor lived, disaster was moving fast. That night, the sky did not just rain, it roared. Thunder shook the ground like the earth was crying. Wind howled through the streets, ripping weak roofs, shaking broken doors, and bending old trees. Hannah woke up suddenly. Her heart felt heavy. Without knowing why, she looked at Eli. He was sleeping, holding his small blanket tightly. Then she heard it. A distant sound, a deep, frightening sound. Water. She rushed to the door and opened it. The narrow street was already filling with fast-moving water. The river near the poor area had overflowed. The flood had come. The poorest part of the town was built on the lowest ground. Small houses, weak walls, old wood. And now, rising water. People screamed in the distance. Children cried. Mothers ran holding babies. The flood was not violent like in movies, but it was silent, fast, and unstoppable. Hannah grabbed Eli. We must go to the shelter now. They stepped into the water. It reached Hannah's knees within minutes. People were running in all directions in fear. Some slipped, some carried elderly people, some stood frozen, not knowing where to go. Hannah saw an old blind man standing near his door, shaking in fear. No one had noticed him. Without thinking, she pushed Eli gently toward a neighbor. Take him to the shelter. Don't stop. Eli cried out, Mama, don't leave me. Hannah turned and smiled through tears. Jesus is with you. I will bring others. Before Eli could speak again, the neighbor pulled him into safety. Hannah turned back into the water alone. The water now reached her waist. The cold cut into her body. Her clothes became heavy, but her heart was on fire. She knocked on doors. Come out. The water is rising. Some people were too weak. Some were too afraid. Hannah helped an old woman onto her shoulders. She pulled a frightened child by the hand step by step. In pain, shaking, slipping, she moved toward higher ground. People began to follow her. She knows the way. She is not afraid. But Hannah was afraid. She was terrified. Yet she kept moving because love moves even when fear screams at the shelter. People were gathering fast. Wet, shaking, crying. Eli stood at the door, searching every face. Mama, where is my mama? Someone shook their head. She went back for others. Fear crushed Eli's heart. He fell to his knees and cried out loud, Jesus, please bring my mama back. You saved me when I was sick. Please save her now. The whole shelter went silent. Even the strongest men lowered their heads. A child was praying and heaven was listening. The water was now at Hannah's chest. Her arms were weak. The old woman she had helped was now safe. The child she had held was now gone. With the crowd, only Hannah remained in the flood. Morehouse was still standing. Inside it, she heard a baby crying. Without thinking, Hannah stepped forward again. The water pulled at her legs. Her breath became heavy. She reached the doorway, lifted the small baby, and turned back. But the current was now stronger. For the first time, Hannah felt real fear for her own life. She looked up at the dark sky and whispered, Jesus, I gave you everything. If today is my last day, please let my child grow up knowing you listened. Her strength almost failed. And then, she felt hands, strong hands, pulling her. Men from the town had followed her. They lifted her and the baby together step by step. They moved toward safety. When Hannah finally reached the shelter, weak and shaking, the crowd parted. Eli saw her. He ran and threw himself into her arms. People cried. Men who never prayed before fell to their knees. Women held their children tight. The man from the church spoke with a shaking voice. Tonight, we did not just see a flood. Tonight, we saw faith walking through water. Someone whispered when the poor cry, Jesus listens, and the whole shelter repeated it softly like a prayer. By morning, the water had gone. Many houses were damaged. Many people had lost what little they had. But no life was lost, not one. The town called it the night Jesus passed through water. Weeks passed. Donations came from other towns. The shelter was rebuilt, bigger and stronger. The bakery reopened with new owners. Work returned. Food returned. Hope returned. Hannah was not just the shelter helper now. She became its heart. Eli grew stronger, kinder, bolder. One day he asked, Mama, why did Jesus save us again and again? Hannah smiled gently. Because when the poor cry, my son, Jesus listens. And sometimes he answers through us.